Hello, my name is Ehren Foley, and I'm an acquisitions editor here at the University of South Carolina Press. We'd like to welcome you to our virtual booth here at SHA and take an opportunity to point out a few of our recent offerings that will be of particular interest to many attendees of SHA, and also highlight some of the areas of editorial interest here at the press. Here we have a few offerings in public history and public memory from Lydia Brandt, a study of the monuments and markers at the South Carolina State House. Certainly that's specific to South Carolina in one way, although the book really pulls out the ways in which memory operates there at the State House, and it might be useful even for others who live in state capitals or other places where there's these clusters of monuments to think about the operation of the public square and public memory therein. It could be a nice model for something like that. Roger C. Hartley, constitutional law professor, has written a book, Monumental Harm, looking at the legacy of Confederate monuments and really thinking through their disposition moving forward. Certainly this has been an ongoing debate within our society over the past several years, and he really takes a deep look at some of the legal and historical implications of those monuments. A collection of essays challenging history. It's a series of case studies about the ways in which we have told stories of underrepresented communities in public to public audiences. It's written as a series of essays by public history practitioners and professionals. So that could be another sort of useful classroom tool potentially, or just for others who are working in that space. In terms of civil rights history, this is another big area of acquisitions for us here at the press. We have a few offerings here on the table, and certainly you can look deeper into our catalog for more. One is White Lawyer, Black Power. It's a memoir written by Don Jelenic. Jelenic worked with both SNCC and the ACLU as a pro bono lawyer in the mid-1960s in Alabama and Mississippi. And so that it's a memoir of his experiences there. He worked and defended such individuals as H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. So he tells some great stories. It also has a wonderful foreword by the historian John Dittmer. And John says of the book that it's the best memoir from a white civil rights activist that he has seen. So certainly it comes highly recommended. Claudia Brinson, a longtime journalist here in South Carolina, has written a book, Stories of Struggle, looking at those stories known and less known about the people and the individuals who helped push forward the civil rights movement here in South Carolina. Stephen Lowe, a historian, has written The Slow Undoing. This is really about the federal courts and their role, particularly in South Carolina, within the civil rights movement, both in moving forward the push for greater inclusion, but also as a bulwark of the old order, so that tension that existed within the courts. Kind of in a somewhat similar vein in civil rights, the historian Eli Faber has written an account of the execution of George Junius Stinney, 14-year-old boy who was executed by the state of South Carolina in the 1940s. And it's really a broader examination of the circumstances and the causes that led to that moment and for that event to take place. On a somewhat lighter note, we have a really wonderful new book, Taste the State. I think this will be of interest to a lot of folks here, both personally and professionally. It offers both a historical background of the foods, primarily from South Carolina and the South Carolina-Georgia Low Country, gives their origins, their history, their backgrounds, and also includes some really wonderful recipes. So you kind of get both elements there. In terms of, we have a few books sort of in the looking at music and culture. Gullah Spirituals by musicologist Eric Crawford, looking at the South Carolina Sea Islands, particularly St. Helena, and the musical traditions that developed there, both in slavery and afterwards, and their both social and political meanings. A really interesting book that I think people should pick up, think about for potential course adoption, and just read generally. Live at Jackson Station, about a blues bar that operated in Greenwood, South Carolina, in the western portion of the state from the 1970s to the very early 1990s, operated by two gay men as proprietors. Really served as a come as you are venue there in rural South Carolina. A lot of great stories. Really operates as a biography of the place, of the town, of the time, and then ends with a really tragic outcome for Gerald Jackson, the proprietor there. Native American History, a wonderful new book by Brian Reinfleisch about two brothers, two Muskogee Creek brothers. It's brothers of Coetta, and it's really an exploration of kinship, power, and place in and within the Creek Muskogee world of the 18th century, right up through the American Revolution. It's a great exploration and a nice kind of model of how to mine the archives for greater biographical, personal details, and to tell a broader story about some key individuals there. An interesting project here, In the Service of God and Humanity by Tunde Adeleke. It is an intellectual history of Martin Delany, African-American activist, nationalist from the 19th century. In addition to what you'll get from the content of the book, this was also published as part of the Sustainable History Monograph pilot, which means that the digital edition, the ebook of this, is openly available through a number of venues, JSTOR, Muse, EBSCO, among others. So if you're thinking about assigning this book for a course adoption, for example, your students are going to have free access to that through your library system, most likely. Of course, it's also available in print as well. So that might be an interesting thing to consider. We have a few books here, our 101 series, a new book series that we've now had a few volumes come out in. We have 101 African Americans, 101 women, and 101 people and places that shaped the American Revolution. These are all focused on South Carolina and South Carolina history as potential course adoptions as well. These can be pretty attractive, priced at $19.99 at a list price, and really offer an introduction to some of these topics for students. It can be a nice way in to these as potential course offerings. Slavery and the history of race are other big areas of acquisition for us. Certainly, John Marks, we have a comparative study of free people of color in Charleston and Cartagena. That's Black Freedom in the Age of Slavery, and that's a nice offering as well. And then finally, a new edition of Jean Genovese's book, really kind of a 30th edition, 30th anniversary edition of his book, The Slaveholder's Dilemma, a classic volume and a nice short entryway into certainly Jean's thought about slavery as he progressed in the latter portion of his career. It also includes a new foreword by Douglas Ambrose. So that's another product we have here. Certainly, in addition to these, peruse our backlist, our catalog, and take a look at some of our other offerings. Certainly, if you have a project in process and are interested in submitting, we'll have a link below on how to do that, and I'm definitely interested to see projects in all of these areas. So we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you very much for stopping by.